An amazing find in amber of some ancient creature's tail with feathers. Is stirring a bit of controversy. Hello, welcome to another Tomorrow's World Webcast. My name is Wallace Smith, and this article comes from the BBC. I really saw it in a lot of different places. Science things tend to be on my radar, but I'm just going to go ahead and use this article for the sake of our webcast. From the BBC, December 8th, 2016, the title is Beautiful, quote unquote, Beautiful Dinosaur Tail Found Preserved in Amber. It's actually a fascinating tale. The scientist was actually buying the amber like on the market for polished pieces of jewelry, but then discovered what this piece of amber represented. Let me read just a bit from the article. They write here, the one-of-a-kind discovery helps put flesh on the bones of these extinct creatures, opening a new window on the biology of a group that dominated the Earth for more than 160 million years. Examination of the specimen suggests the tail was chestnut brown on top and white on its underside. The tail is described in the journal Current Biology. The article itself has lots of pictures from Current Biology, including an artist's sketch of this creature. But please understand, all they have is a tail. It's a little less than 1.5 inches long, which we'll talk about. And yet, of course, they're willing to sketch the rest of it for us. Anyway, it mentions this particular professor, Dr. McKellar. It says, Dr. McKellar said examination of the tail's anatomy showed it definitely belonged to a feathered dinosaur and not an ancient bird. Now, they really want to stress that for particular reasons we'll mention here in a moment. Continuing, it says that he explained, we can be sure of the source because the vertebrae are not fused into a rod or pygostyle as in modern birds and their closest relatives. He says, instead, the tail is long and flexible with keels of feathers running down each side. Well, there you have it. I'm not going to read the entire article. You might look it up yourself. It's fascinating to me looking at the actual pictures of these feathers. I loved it. I love news like this, and I love reading articles like this. But we do have to keep in mind that it's very easy for scientists to jump out with a lot of conclusions, and time tends to shed additional light on those conclusions. For instance, it says the tail is long and flexible. And you start hearing about a dinosaur tail, long and flexible, and you might be thinking of a long piece. Really, we're looking at just a hair under 1.5 inches. This is not a really large specimen. They theorize the creature itself may have been the size of a sparrow. Okay, a sparrow. So we're not talking about a very large creature. We're not talking about Tyrannosaurus walking around wearing feathers. We're talking about a very small creature. And there is some debate as to whether it really is a dinosaur that is a non-bird instead of a bird. This is really one of the few things they have to examine to try to determine whether it's a bird or a dinosaur, that the tail vertebrae were not fused, but they only have about 8 vertebrae. The fact is that Archaeopteryx, an ancient bird that we have full skeletons of, it also has portions of its tail that are not fused. Only the end part of its tail has fused bones, whereas this section of the tail, from my reading, is actually a middle part of the tail. Plus, some analysis has shown there's really not a lot of muscle tissue there. There is tissue, but not a lot of muscle tissue, whereas the kind of dinosaur they seem to be trying to relate it to, theropods, tend to have more muscle tissue in that tail. So there's really a lot to still be debated. In fact, they point out that according to their timescales, the creature lived about 99 million years ago. And yet we do have ancient birds that lived during the same time scale. So it really doesn't seem to be impossible that this actually might be a bird. Now, why is it they're really stressing one? Well, it reminds me of the ancient man discussions, quote unquote ancient man, that no one wants to find the ancient skull of an ancient chimpanzee, it seems. No one wants to find an ancient skull that looks like it might be related to monkeys or chimpanzees or gorillas or men and have it not actually be an ancestor of man. People seem to want, they passionately desire that we're somehow finding our own ancestors. Well, you get the same kind of passions involved in studies like this. If they can somehow make dinosaurs seem more bird-like, then it tends to fit the tale that many scientists do believe that birds evolved from dinosaurs. And yet at the same time, we have contemporaneous creatures here who were birds. The advice I try to give in times like this is don't get caught up in all of this. Just read the article, appreciate that some part of God's creation is being discovered more about, that we're learning things, but just don't buy into things immediately when you read them. Give science time to correct itself, because the one thing we do know is true. As God says in the Bible through the mouth of Paul, let God be true and every man a liar. People will try to use discoveries like this and use it to press evolution. And yet if we know truly evolution is not true, just allow time for the facts to sort themselves out. It's a fascinating discovery. Some of the most detailed, I think, discovery of feathers that they have found, just beautifully preserved. Just enjoy it. Just appreciate the God of creation and let the details sort themselves out as they come to light as time passes. Thank you for watching. Please watch everything we have available, videos, articles, and the rest at tomorrowsworld.org.